Okay, welcome to Level 1 Science Online with Henny van Vieren.
Okay, hi Year 11s. You asked me to go through a paper with you, and I thought that I would do the 2020 genetics paper. So question 1 was, as you can see here, Huntington's disease is a genetic disorder in animals. No, in humans. Sorry, what am I doing? Let me just get the right word there. Yep. So Huntington's disease is a genetic disorder in humans. It's caused by a dominant affected allele, capital H. The normal allele is recessive. So if you don't have Huntington, it means that you are recessive. And the first thing that we can say is somebody that displays the recessive trait always have to be homozygous recessive. Okay, state the possible genotypes and phenotypes for Huntington's disease. Now remember, what you know about dominance is that if there is a dominant allele present, it will always be expressed. So we will have homozygous dominant, okay, and the female will be a Huntington's positive. Okay, we can have a heterozygote, but because Huntington's is dominant, it will also be Huntington's positive. However, if you are a recessive, you're a normal person that do not have this disease, then you have to be homozygous recessive, which means healthy. Okay, that's quite easy. And what do we get for that? If we answered any one genotype linked, so any genotype, so if you got one of them correct, you actually got an A already. Okay, that's nice and easy. So there's my first A. Thank you. Now, explain how the two alleles, just get something a little bit darker. Explain how the two alleles, Huntington's dominant and Huntington's recessive, combine to produce the different genotypes. In your answer, you should define phenotype and genotype. Okay, so define phenotype and genotype. Explain how the three genotypes code for only two phenotypes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so a genotype is a combination of your two alleles. It looks so wrong. Anyway, combination of the two alleles that codes for your phenotype. Okay. Bang. If you have a dominant allele present, then you will always see that trait or protein. If you have a dominant allele present, then you will always see that trait or the protein expressed in the phenotype. Okay, now a phenotype is the physical feature slash trait or protein that a gene codes for and is determined by the combination of your alleles. Okay, now, so we defined what a phenotype and a genotype is, so that's done. Explain how the three genotypes code for only two phenotypes. So, in this case of Huntington's, we see 3 genotypes. Okay, so number 1 is homozygous recessive. People tell me I make my Z weird. Sorry about that. Homozygous recessive. This trait will only be seen if there are no dominant alleles. So homozygous recessive is normal if there are no dominant alleles present. Okay, running out of space. I'll move that in a moment. So, number 2 is going to be heterozygous. And heterozygous is affected. And the dominant allele is masked. Is masking the recessive. And then lastly, homozygous dominant. And homozygous dominant means dominant allele is always expressed when present, and in this case it is homozygous. Okay. Let's see how we did. So, for question B, they said that a genotype is the combination of the 2 alleles coding for a trait. Yay! We got that right. Let me just do this. I have my pencil. Nice. And how thick is my pencil? Hopefully relatively thin. Not 0. Okay. A phenotype is the physical representation of the genotype. Okay. In heterozygous, the dominant allele is dominant over the recessive allele and masks it. Okay. Thus, the phenotype of the individual is affected by Huntingtons. In the homozygous recessive, the codes for the phenotype that is unaffected by Huntingtons, both the recessive alleles must be present to produce a phenotype that is unaffected by Huntingtons and homozygous recessive. And then lastly, homozygous dominant and heterozygous genotype code for the phenotype affected by Huntingtons. So, for excellence, we had to comprehensively explain how the 2 alleles interact and produce 3 genotypes, which in turn count for 2. We did that. For merit, if you only explained heterozygous and a dominant masking the recessive, then you could still get 1 M, and then the second M you could get explain both recessive alleles producing the phenotype unaffected. You guys know this so well, so there's no way that you wouldn't have gotten this one at least. So I'm convinced that you guys would have gotten at least merit for this, if not excellence, and I think it's really achievable to get an excellence. Okay, so that was question, where's part C of question 1? Hello? Oh, I put it here. So Huntington disease occurs when a mutation causes a dominant affected allele, capital H. The normal allele is recessive. The allele for the unaffected is there, allele for the affected is there. Using Huntington disease as an example of the diagram above, explain the relationship between DNA, genes, alleles, mutations, and phenotypes. Okay, so we did all of this before. So DNA, that is, I'm not going to write all of this out, but all of your genetic material. Okay, and they are the DNA codes for everything that makes you, all your traits, etc. is coded for in your DNA. It is contained in every single cell, and it is subdivided into chromosomes. So a section of a chromosome, which is again a section of DNA, that codes for a specific protein or trait is called a gene. When a zygote is formed, so now we're doing alleles. Alleles. My spelling today is horrible. Sorry. Alleles. Okay. So an allele is a combination, or during zygote formation or fertilization, you get one allele from your mom and one allele from your dad. It is a combination of different alleles, but it is the same gene with different traits. And the way that it differs from each other is because the base sequence is different. Okay. And lastly, a mutation. The only way that you can get a new allele is through a mutation. And mutations is a change, a permanent change in the gene DNA base sequence. Okay, and then lastly, the combination of your alleles will give you the phenotype, which is the expression of your genotype, and the genotype is made up of the alleles, and so phenotype is the physical feature phenotype. Okay, let's have a look at the model answer. So it says here, DNA contains genetic information. A gene is a section of DNA that codes for a particular protein, feature, or characteristics. Alleles are different versions of the gene that have different base sequence. You have to say different base sequence, guys. If you don't do that, you're going to get in trouble. Alleles, in this case, will code for the phenotype of an unaffected Huntington's person, because it is homozygous recessive. A mutation is a change in the order of the DNA base sequence. You should say a permanent change, which causes a new allele. That is the only way that we can get new alleles. The new allele codes for a different protein, resulting in the phenotype Huntingtons. I think we covered most of that. So number one, if you only studied for achieved, all you needed to do was tell us what DNA is, tell us what a gene is, tell us what an allele is. Defines the phenotype in this case as Huntington's disease, and the mutation as a change in the base sequence. There is 4 options for you to get A, and you all know this already. All of you can tell me what DNA is and so forth. So I'm certain that you guys will be good in here. For merit, you had 3 opportunities to gain merit here, and look, for M6 you only needed 2. And we already at least got 1 in the previous one. Okay, so a mutation is a change in the basis of DNA which codes for a new allele. We said that. Explains that DNA base sequence on a gene determines the appearance of the particular feature, phenotype, or trait. Okay, we did that. Show an in-depth understanding of the linkage between all 3. There we go. So there's another M opportunity there. And lastly, to get E, discussion which links the explanation of the relationship between DNA, genes, and alleles with a mutation causing a change in the order of the bases, coding for a new allele, producing a different protein, resulting in Huntington's. And if I have to be really honest with you, during my verbal discussion that we just did, I didn't refer back to the disease enough. And because of that, I wouldn't have gotten my E. Okay. But there you go. Very easy. There's question 1, and I will record another one for question 2. Thank you so much, and we will chat again soon.